Hi everybody, welcome to Leonardo's Pizzeria. Leonardo's Pizzeria isn't actually a pizzeria that exists. It's in my home. So it's kind of, it's just something that I believe in, my own pizzeria. My middle name is Leonardo. My real name is Lonny Balbi. So I'm here to give you some ideas and some lessons on how to actually cook pizza. We're going to have a bunch of little videos, one on how to make the dough, another one we're going to do on how to make the tomato sauce, another one we're going to do on actually how to form the dough, and another one on how to make it in the oven. And I have a wood-fired pizza oven, and then I've also got a regular oven. So I'm going to show you both ways. I'm going to give you lots of different sort of options on how to make pizza. However, in all of my travels to Italy, all the times that I go there, I try this pizza, and I've learned from the best pizza chefs, and they all have one thing very consistent, and that is you have to be in the right mood to make pizza. How do you get in the right mood? You got to have an aperitif. What's an aperitif? Well, let's just have a little, maybe some Prosecco. So I'm just going to grab some Prosecco here out of the fridge. And here we go with the Prosecco. Now, Prosecco, well, this is kind of a little small. It wouldn't even be worth my time to even try this, but it's a nice little bottle. It's from Italy, and Prosecco is kind of like almost like a champagne, and it's fantastic. You should try this, but I've got more. It's the very same brand, but in a decent size. Okay, so we're going to have this. This is the Prosecco. So here we go. Let's just see here. They talk about being in the right mood, and there's no better way to get in the right mood than to have a little bit of wine. Although, I don't know what I've got for glasses. Here, I'll just grab a little glass here. So we'll put this down, and we just put a little, well, let's see. I mean, like, I thought when you fill up these glasses, you're supposed to get it to about the crest, right? So, well, I guess I'll just do this. Put a little bit more Prosecco. Gee, anyway, we're going to have no problem making pizzas today. Here we go. Okay, that's the whole bottle. Put that down, and here we go. Salute, salute. That's beautiful. Here, I'm going to set that just over here, and we're going to get going here. Put this away. Now, let's start with making our pizza. Now, I mentioned to you that there's so many ways to make pizza, and what happens is people have all these different recipes, and it's really confusing. So what I wanted to do is just really make it simple. Now, here's how it works. There's 4 ingredients that we need to have. That's it, 4 ingredients. You got to have flour. You got to have a little bit of yeast, and I'm going to be using dry yeast today, so it's nice and easy. Then you use sea salt. I've got a little bit of sea salt here, and I'll go into the amounts in a moment. And then I use distilled water, okay? I like to use a nice clean water for this. I won't be using the wine because I'll use that. I'll just drink that up. The other thing you should have is a scale. A lot of people don't have scales. These are really good. One of the things about making pizza dough is you have to have the right percentages of weight to hydration. And one of the problems is in North America we tend to use just volume. And because, like, for example, where I live, it's very dry here, and the flour can be quite light. It doesn't have a lot of moisture in it. So it's much better, if you want to be accurate, the better way to do it is to actually use a scale. But I'm going to show you both ways to do it. So here's the recipe for today. Okay? So we've got here, I've already pre-mixed this. This is 00 pizza flour. You can buy it at just about any place you want, like that has sort of Italian store or something like that. 00. It's just a more refined flour. You can use regular flour too if you don't have it, but 00 is really nice, and it gives a very light, crusty flavor. So start with that. I'm having 1,000 grams of flour. That's what that is there right now. I've already pre-mixed it, 1,000 grams of flour. And then that's about 6.5 cups of flour if you're going to use the sort of volume. But it's better if you can do it by weight. And then I've also got some water. So I mentioned to you that I'm using distilled water. This is 650 grams of water, and it's a little bit warmer than room temperature. I just gave it a quick heat in the microwave. It's not not hot. It's just a little bit warm to touch, and I think that's good for the yeast to ferment. So that's what I've got here. So that's 650 grams, and that's really about 3 cups of water. Okay, so that'll get you pretty close. The next thing you have to have is some yeast. So yeast, there's fresh yeast and then there's dry yeast. Most people use dry yeast. I'm using dry yeast just because that's what I find in the store, and it works really well. The funny thing is that when you're making pizza dough, you don't need very much yeast. It's actually very little. This is 6 grams of yeast. Okay, that's about a teaspoon of yeast. Not very much at all. So we're going to use this today. And then the last ingredient I mentioned to you is salt. And so you use some sea salt, and this is about a tablespoon of salt. Okay, so those are the 4 ingredients. That's all you need to do. So we start out right away I'm going to start out over here and just going to put the yeast into the water. So I like to spread it in there. And then I'm going to get a spoon or a fork here and just mix it up. That's all it is. Just give it a chance to sort of do this and start to ferment. Now, when you do this, one of the reasons I like to do it, I actually had a friend of mine, he called me one day and he said, I'm making pizza dough and it's not working. And then I asked him about this, how he did it. And what he did is he put it in here, he actually put it in here, and it wasn't doing anything. The yeast had died. So he bought some yeast at the store that was actually dead. And so this makes sure that your yeast is alive and active. So what you do is you mix it up, and then you're going to leave it for about 10 or 15 minutes. And if you start to see it bubbling up, you know that it's alive and it's working. So we're just going to set that aside, and then we're going to come back to that in about 15 minutes. Okay guys, here we are. I wanted to show you the fermented yeast. So have a look at this. See how it's bubbled up? It's all gotten nice and bubbly. That means it's active, it's working. And so I'll just stir it up a little bit more. But the yeast is good, so that's a good sign. We want to make sure we do that. I've put together, so I'm using a KitchenAid here to mix the dough. Now, you can do it 2 ways, right? You can either mix it by hand, which I'm going to show you a little bit later, or you can mix it with this thing. I got to tell you, there's no way that I'm ever going to do it except doing it with a machine. One time I took a course on making bread, and I was sitting there, and we were doing all of this kneading of the bread, and I said, well, what about like a bread machine? Like, why wouldn't we learn about this, how to do it really good with using a bread machine? And the woman just about killed me. She thought that I might as well have stolen one of her babies, because she thought it was unbelievable that I would even ask that. And thank God there was a woman sitting next to me, and she says, I was kind of thinking the same thing. But in the end, we ended up having to do it all by hand. And I guess because, that's the authentic way of doing it. And again, I'll show it to you. But in terms of time and effort, just use a machine if you've got one of these. So what you can do is you can set these at a fairly low setting. I usually go to 2 when I'm adding the water to it, and then I'm going to add the salt a bit later. So starting out right away, we're just going to get this thing going. And I just mix up the water a little bit and just pour it in. And that's it. So you can see that it's a bit kind of messy in here, and you want that. And we're waiting for it to incorporate. We want to get that dough really incorporated well. And I usually like to help it along a little bit by just pushing some of the flour into the messy part there, just to make it a little faster, that's all. And once it starts to gain a little bit there, I slow it down to just stir, and then I'm going to start it. I like to add the salt a little by little, just to allow it to incorporate into the dough. Yeah, my old bread teacher would probably have a heart attack if she saw me doing this now. But of course, we weren't making pizza at that time. We were just making bread. So maybe there's a difference. It's all good though. They say that when you're making pizza dough, it's really important that you wear an apron so you don't get dirty. clearly that's not the reason. It's so that you don't spill on yourself when you're drinking. That's really what it's about. And you can spill quite easily with a big glass like that. Anyway, let's get this thing going. Now, I didn't tell you this at the beginning, but I'm making pizza dough for 6 pizzas. Now, that's quite a bit of pizza. Most of you might think, well, I'm only going to make 1 pizza. I only need to have 1 pizza. But nobody wants 1 pizza. Let's be clear on that. Everybody, if you're going to make 1, you might as well make 6. So that's what I'm doing. You're going to make 6 pizza dough. Of course, if you want to make less, you can cut the recipe in half. No problem. But this particular recipe is what we call 65% hydration, which is pretty much perfect for pizza dough. You can have 70 or even 80% hydration, but for pizza, for 00 flour, if you want a real good crust, go with 65%. Just the way I mentioned to you, 1,000 grams of flour, 650 grams of water, and the yeast and the 6 grams of yeast and 20 grams of salt. If you do that, you're going to have a really good pizza dough. So let's get going here. Okay, so here we are. We're just about ready to take the dough out. So I'm going to stop the machine, and we'll just give it a chance to, we'll just let the dough kind of off the dough hook. And then we're gonna get this, there we go. So we're gonna come over here, and I wanna just show you how to knead this dough. So now that the dough has been well incorporated, it looks really good. So we're gonna add a little bit of flour. This is where my bread making teacher is going to be very happy, because now I'm gonna actually do something that was taught to us. We didn't use any machines at all in that class. So all I'm doing is getting the dough out of the bowl as much as I can. Okay, so you can see it's still pretty sticky, and that's okay. That's okay. And you saw that I put a little bit of flour onto the counter, because you're going to need to do that, otherwise it'll stick. So the way to do this, the proper kneading technique, is just to go like this, and you're just going to knead it. So this is the final, this could be the way that you make dough if you don't have a machine or you don't want to use a machine. I don't know why anybody would not want to use a machine, but if you don't want to use a machine and you want to do it by hand, you would just simply take all the dough, add the water, and just incorporate it by hand. And you just do this, and it would probably take you about 20 minutes of fairly hard work. And I'm just going to do about 5 minutes, because I'm lazy. And then we just keep going. See how nice this is? Yeah, that's a really nice dough. So, look at this. Once you have a dough, once you've worked it for a while, we're going to put it into a bowl. I just lightly oiled it. We're going to put it in here to rest. And then I'm going to cover it with some saran wrap here. You can do this. So it's just nice. We want to keep the moisture inside. There we go. There. So we're going to just set that aside and let it rise for about 2 hours.